Do you have a paranormal encounter you'd like to share with us? Send us an email with your story for a chance of it being featured on Weird World. These bizarre glitches in the fabric of time were reported by 3 Weird World viewers, with 2 of the time-slip experiences especially powerful as they were witnessed by a family member. Pamela Christie. Pamela had a confusing experience where she seemed to go back and forth in time. In the 1990s, her parents retired to the small coastal town of Cambria, California, in the US, where she used to visit them a few times a year. She was particularly fond of a craft supply store on Main Street called Paws on Main, where she often shopped, becoming a faithful customer over several years, until one day her mother told her that it had gone out of business. At some point during that visit, Pamela and her brother walked past the empty shop and looked in the windows. The sign was gone and the shop interior was covered in dust, as though it had been vacant for decades. This seemed strange because, according to her mother, it had been shut for only a few weeks. 10 years later, Pamela moved into her parents' house to care for her widowed father. One evening, she and her dad went out to dinner with another of her brothers. They drove into town and parked on Main Street, which was when brother number 2 asked if she still shopped at the little crafts store. Pamela replied no, as the shop had been gone for years. "What, isn't that it?" he asked, indicating the sign. And it was. Pamela observed the same sign in the same place, and when she peered in at the window, the shelves were all stocked exactly as they had been before the supposed closure. She lost no time in getting down there the next day to find out what happened. The same woman sat behind the counter, looking exactly as she had a decade previously. When Pamela told her what had happened, she was mystified, but confirmed that she had always been right there and that the shop had never been closed, except for once when she was on vacation but had someone cover for her. She insisted that the shop had never been empty since she bought it. Pamela questioned her first brother, who clearly remembered peering in the window with her at the empty abandoned space, concluding that if she was crazy, he was too. The next time she went to the shop, the proprietor said, "No one's ever reported having an experience like yours, but 3 or 4 times people have come in here and told me they remember when I used to have this shop on Burton Way." She would tell them that she was never on Burton Way, but always in her current location. Oddly, these customers argued with her, insisting that they're right, but she's the one who should know where her shop has or hasn't been. Joy Bell. Joy Bell wrote of an incident that happened to her in the early 90s. She was on holiday with her partner in Ingleton, which is a village in the Yorkshire Dales in North Yorkshire in England. During their trip, she needed some cash, so being a Barclays customer, she went into their local bank, which was in a village at the top of a hill. Her partner stayed outside the bank waiting for her. Joy immediately noted that the bank did not have a cash machine, so she walked up to the front desk, handed her card over and asked for £20 in cash. At this stage, Joy hadn't noticed the distinctly 1970s vibe around the decor. The female bank teller looked at Joy's card, then called the manager over. "Have you ever seen anything like this before?" she asked him. The bank manager looked at the card and then asked Joy, "What is that?" It truly shocked her that they did not know what a bank card was. They asked her to hand over the card so that they and the rest of the staff could all look at it. Joy then noticed that the bank had old 70s phones and there were no computers to be seen. Instead, the staff had large ledgers from which they were working. She found herself thinking that this was strange. The manager then asked her if she had a bank book, to which she replied that she didn't. On his 70s-style cream phone, the manager then rang up the bank's head office. After the call, he came back to Joy and asked her what her account number was. She couldn't remember all her account details, so returned to her husband, who suggested they search for a cash machine because it was obvious that the bank couldn't assist them. Joy remembers the incident as a weird and unforgettable experience. As a child growing up in the 70s, she knows that banks used to operate just like this, and she believes that she did indeed encounter a time slip. Joy has researched the Barclays Bank in Yorkshire and found that between 1918 and the 1970s, Barclays opened additional branches in Yorkshire to expand its presence there. Business historians also state that the bank, although founded in the 1700s, was a forerunner of banking technology and the first to introduce computers. While there are probably non-believers in what Joy has reported, she's not bothered as she knows what happened and what she witnessed. Whether that particular bank branch was so out of touch and still stuck in the old ways of doing things, she doubts, as this would not explain how all the bank's staff had never seen a bank card. She is convinced that we are able to see glimpses back in time in the strange world we live in. Keith Macey. In 1992, Keith and his mum Elsie Macey decided to go for a walk one late afternoon along Hornsey Lane and across the Archway Bridge towards Highgate in North London, England. The bridge is a famous landmark which was built in 1897 and crosses the busy main A1 dual carriageway. They had just walked over the bridge on the right-hand side and were strolling past a row of very old, tall, terraced houses, the kind that would have had servants' quarters on the top floors back in Victorian times. Each house had a front garden with a tall pair of stone pillars and an impressive tiled path leading to the front door. Keith explains that it was a dry, clear day and he and his mum were walking side by side with no one else coming towards them or walking in front of them on the pavement on either side. As they passed the tall houses, he saw the figure of a woman emerge. Well, at least he assumed it was a woman and not a man, as the person wore a long black coat that almost touched the ground and had a hood. In actual fact, the long black garment looked more like a cape. The eerie figure stepped out between the two of the stone pillars, off the path from the house, and placed one foot down on the pavement, then the other. The figure was solid and highly visible, stepping out about 8 feet in front of them. Then, astonishingly, it simply vanished in an instant. Keith stopped in his tracks and realised his mother had done the same next to him, asking, "Did you just see?" After hesitating for a moment, Keith replied that yes, he had. His mum looked relieved, as was Keith, having thought that it was just him. The two compared notes, with Keith describing the figure all dressed in black, which had just stepped out of the gateway, to which Elsie replied that she had seen exactly the same thing, adding, "But did you see it just disappear?" It had instantaneously vanished right in front of both of them. Keith thought his mother was still trying to believe it was real, as she asked him to describe what kind of clothing the figure was wearing. When Keith said a coat which looked more like an old-fashioned flowing cape, his mum confirmed with him whether it had had a hood. Keith replied yes, kind of like the type in the Scottish Widows Insurance Company TV advertisements, and his mother agreed, having seen exactly the same thing. They slowly walked forward to the exact spot and looked towards the house from where the figure had emerged. There appeared nothing unusual, it all looked normal, and there was no cold spot. It was just a normal street. Neither Keith nor his mother saw the hands of the figure, and the hood being fully up and viewed from one side, they saw no face either. However, both felt it was that of a woman, not a man. The style of cape worn by the figure was in keeping with the period when the bridge was built and the surrounding old houses. He and Elsie do not really believe in ghosts, but think they saw perhaps a passage in time whereby an event in the past slipped into our present. Whatever it was, they both saw it together, and it was solid and very real, then just vanished in a second.